Okay, we're here today with Dr. Meg Vertigan. She's an author, grammar queen, academic and lecturer at the University of Newcastle, and she has written a book called The Strong Dress. Hello, Meg.
Hi, Marta. Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, I'm just going to read the blurb about your story. It is 1977 and Kate is a 17-year-old HSC student from Sydney's North Shore. She has dreams of becoming the next Ita Buttrose and being the editor of Clio. Yet the 1970s free love and peace vibe has not yet hit Kate's suburban home in Beecroft. Kate's carefree behaviour leads her parents to seek the advice of Dr. Jack Grafton, a maverick psychiatrist. Kate is subsequently subjected to slumber therapy, where she is given a cocktail of drugs that leave her confused about what is real. The second part of the novel witnesses the decline of Grafton, who claimed he could cure all mental illness after multiple deaths of his patients. After Jack's suicide, a bereaved fellow psychiatrist attempts to tell the story of his sharp-minded, gregarious friend and defends his increasingly irrational behaviour in the lead-up to his death. So the first thing I want to ask you, Meg, is can you tell me about the title and what it means?
Okay, so The Strong Dress is a very older than this book, type of straitjacket that they would put on women. So it was a canvas dress that was very tight and would restrict your movement. Your arms were in, so you couldn't move. And I actually thought it was quite apt because perhaps we are all wearing strong dresses in society, high heels. Make it more difficult to move. A lot of our clothes make it more difficult to move, but not necessarily even physical things. You know, as a female in our society, perhaps we're all wearing a strong dress, and once you become aware of it, it might be easier to take it off.
Are you including things like makeup, handbag, heels?
Yeah, but even shall I dare say the word?
Say.
The patriarchy. Things you can't see.
Okay. I don't know what to think of that. I really don't. Because I'm not a strong proponent of the patriarchy now. That I don't know. I'll have to think about that a bit more, and next time do my homework and we'll have a chat about the patriarchy.
Patriarchy. Does it exist?
Why did you choose this particular story to tell?
I was very interested in, I think I've always been interested in madness and what is madness. You can do something that is just a little bit different from other people and be considered quite eccentric / mad. For example, I always wear bare feet and I go out to my letterbox with bare feet, but I live in quite a conservative neighbourhood and my neighbours have commented on it several times.
But isn't being bare feet or barefooted, bare feet, having bare feet, isn't that an Australian thing?
I think definitely. So I was quite surprised, especially, the
because
climate here.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, but I've been asked if I grew up on a farm. Well, one of my neighbours is English, so we'll give her a bit of credit. But one day she said to me, "Oh, Meg, I did what you did. I went out to the letterbox with bare feet." I'm sure she only did it the once. So, just that little bit out of the norm, you can, attract attention that you didn't mean to.
Have you ever studied the history of madness?
I have a little bit, yeah.
What do you think of that as progression to, till this happened, your story?
I think that I've studied it, especially within literature. And, if you go back to Jane Eyre, the mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre, she never has a voice. She never says anything. She basically makes animal sounds. So her story is told through her husband, which I found really interesting. A lot of the old things like that, the mad woman, she doesn't tell her own story. Other people are telling us she's crazy. And Jane Eyre, Bertha, the mad woman in the attic, her husband put her in a windowless room for 10 years I think we'd all be making animal sounds after that.
Yeah.
And then if you sort of get, close to sort of the 60s, the bell jar, it's more people telling their own story of mental illness. And it's a lot less, it's more real and more honest, less sort of, the crazy animal sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think madness has changed?
In real life or in literature?
In real life over the years, or our perception of madness?
I think that,
or how we deal with madness.
I think that as a teacher, I've noticed that over the last definitely 5 years, but probably longer, students have absolutely no shame or embarrassment with saying in the front of the class, or, as a member of the class, oh, I've got bipolar, or I've got depression, or whatever. 10 years ago, that would never have happened. So it's much more out in the open and talked about. With those older books in the 70s, and I'm going back to literature here, there was always sort of a cure. There was always a reason why you're mad. Someone had attacked you. Then you go mad. Then you get cured. Whereas in sort of more contemporary books, it seems to be, to me, people learning to live with their madness. And it's something that doesn't necessarily go away, and it's not necessarily caused by a one traumatic event.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to ask you, which is something I should have asked you on the outset. Can you describe what slumber therapy is?
Okay, so
or was.
Okay, so slumber therapy was actually known as deep sleep therapy, and we called it slumber therapy in the book, just to fictionalize it a little bit. And the idea was that, Dr. Harry Bailey, who was the proponent of it in Australia, his idea was that he could cure any mental illness. And that goes from things you've heard of, like schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, to not getting along well with your parents, not enjoying sex with your husband, etc., being gay, having an addiction. And so all of these diseases were lumped, in inverted commas, were lumped in together, and everyone was given the exact same treatment, which was to be put into an artificial coma for, a couple of weeks to a few months in extreme cases. It was also used in England, but one of the main differences, I think, is that over there they would rouse the patient to go to the bathroom, rouse the patient to eat. So it wasn't such a deep sleep. And here they, the patients were nursed naked. They had orange juice and sustagen in nasal gastric tubes, which you can imagine is not great.
Sorry, did you say they were naked? So
they were nursed naked, and they weren't catheterized or anything like that. So,
they would be in their own waste.
They would be in their own waste. Sometimes for quite a while.
Oh God, yeah.
So I think we were talking before that one of the big problems with it is that if you are nursing unconscious patients, and I'm not a medical person, but this is what I understand, it is a real skill. It's something you need to be trained in. Whereas the nurses here, they didn't sort of have the knowledge of doing things like moving the patient so they didn't get bed sores. So sometimes their legs would be literally stuck together and would have to be ripped apart, those sorts of things. So, and also one of the big problems with the deep sleep therapy is, and I guess with not rousing them, is that lying flat is not great for you. And so a lot of patients ended up with fluid in their lungs, and that's how, most of the deaths occurred.
Okay. So why did you choose this particular story?
Well, I was looking at, like I said, was interested in madness. And in the 1920s, your husband or your father, and this was particularly something that happened to women, could be put into a mental institution. So if you want to get rid of your wife, there
Mm.
she goes. And it's not putting her in there for the weekend, it's putting her in there forever. A great story that Australian author Kate Grenfell wrote
Mm.
is called Lillian's Story. And it was based on a true story of B. Miles, who was a local character, I guess, in Sydney. She would do some interesting things like jump on trams and spout Shakespeare to everybody, or jump in taxis and just refuse to get out. This sort of thing. So a lot of people, she was a real character. A lot of people knew who she was. She was older. And as a young person, her father had put her into a mental institution. So it wasn't until some of those mental institutions got deregulated that a lot of these people came out. So I guess I was interested in madness. I was interested in women's madness and that sort of authority that other people could have on them that decreed them to be mad. They're diagnosed literally by their family. So that interested me a lot. So in my research for that, I came across Dr. Harry Bailey and Chelmsford Hospital. And I think that what really intrigued me about it is that he was doing this deep sleep therapy right up until the 1980s, which isn't very long ago. And, it's one thing to say, oh, your father could put you in a mental institution in 1920. It's a very different thing to say, they were doing this in 1980.
Yeah, it's not that long ago. So something I wanted to, your interest in madness, do you think it's something that stems from you? Like as a writer, okay.
All writers are mad, aren't we? I guess
like when I write something or I have an interest in something, I know why. It's something about myself.
I think for me, my interest in madness is more interested in what is perceived as madness.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
And that sort of, the if you're not a certain type of person, if you're slightly different, I guess an example is, you go to your mother's group and all the mothers have, nice clothes on their children, and you have your kid in a bright green jumpsuit that you found in an op shop.
Yeah, would it be fair to say that you as a person, maybe in your character, that you do gravitate or have a interest in difference, in something that's outside of the norm?
Yes, because I think that when you are growing up, you don't realize you're different. And then one day you go, oh, I'm not like those other people.
Yeah.
And, you go through the phase when you're a teenager of trying so hard to be like those people. And then gradually you realize that even when you try really hard, they can still see that you're not that person. So, yeah. And I also think that...
Is that what happened to you?
Oh, definitely.
Did you... Because I think the same thing happened to me, but I think we have very different attitudes towards that.
Okay.
So...
So when I was, 15 or 16, I was very, very smart at school. But of course, what you want when you're at school is to be popular. So I studied the girl that was average, that had lots of friends.
Oh, really?
That had a boyfriend, and I emulated her. My grades went down, but my friendship group went up.
Jeez.
I regret that.
Yeah.
I do, but it was fun.
Do you want me to tell you my experience?
Sure.
So, I like you, I desperately in high school, wanted the same shoes as everyone else wore, the same clothes as anyone else wore.
So important in high school, isn't it? So important.
I thought it was, except that I didn't have it. So, my mum used to buy me secondhand clothes, not popular at the time, weird things, right? Strange clothes. I wore those, and because I was a bit prideful, I suppose, I wore those to school. What I found out was that other people liked what I wore.
Right.
Because they couldn't get what I wore, and what I wore was unusual.
Right.
And I learnt a huge lesson from that, Meg, as a teenager.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It wasn't important. because a lot of people started emulating me, my haircut, trying to get my clothes.
Honey, you were probably just so much cooler than I was.
No, no, I wasn't cool. But it was just that thing of it wasn't a choice. I didn't have a choice.
Yes. But I think also in our the way we are, not just externally with our clothes, I don't know how much choice we have.
As now as teenagers.
At any time, I think that I've heard somebody say I tried being normal and it was the most boring 10 minutes of my life or whatever. But I think, you can try so hard to be somebody different.
What is normal? Yeah.
I don't know. Well, on the Central Coast, long blonde hair, tan.
Is that normal? I don't know. I really don't know. There's not much I do know, but I really don't know. Okay, look, I want to ask you why you chose to tell the story with two perspectives.
I think that I could have written it just from Kate's point of view, just from the girl's point of view. But the story of the doctor, it's actually a true story. And there was so much in there of what he did to patients and, his personal life that I also wanted to tell his story. But they're so far apart that I told it from two different perspectives. I really wanted the doctor to be seen in the way that other people saw him. So
his friend was quite the one who tells the story. His point of view we have is quite admiring of the doctor, isn't he?
Yeah. So he had a real fan club. He was, known on TV. He was loved and liked. He was very gregarious, and so even though he was doing some pretty awful things, personally, cheating on his wife, that kind of thing. But then also professionally having patients, die because you're basically experimenting on them. Yet people loved him. They loved him. So I sort of told it from the other doctor's perspective for that reason.
Was he good looking?
Supposedly, but I've seen photos and I beg to differ. But yes.
He must have been charismatic.
He was very charismatic, very well dressed. Yeah.
Like
beautiful cars, that kind of thing. He was also very generous. So he had, I think it was his wife and another lover, but it could have been two lovers at the same time. I can't quite remember at the moment, but he gave them both a cat from the same litter and a pair of, pearl earrings. And so instead of people going, why is he doing that to two women? They're like, wow, he's amazing. All the women love him, that kind of thing. But also I think that having this narrator that isn't Harry Bailey tell his story, I mean, it gets past the writer's issue of him dying, but also there's other ways of dealing with that. But also it's just, I guess, a little hint that Dr. Bailey didn't work alone. There were other people involved. There's been court cases about this, so there's not heaps that I can say. But, Google is your friend if you want to find out the other people's names.
Okay. Look, for a long time, I conflated Grafton's story with Dr. Timothy Leary.
Yes.
Who did the LSD. So he was a psychiatrist in America, a bit before Dr. Bailey's time.
Yeah.
But I think I'd heard of Dr. Bailey's story in passing and everyone knew of Dr. Leary's story. So I often conflated the two of those together. So it seemed like a time when psychiatrists were free sort of to do almost anything they wanted to do. They weren't held accountable.
Yeah, and I think, there's a chapter in the book where Dr. Harry Bailey and the other doctors basically all go to the hospital and sit around and take LSD to see what it's like, I guess. And they have that, as many people who take these sorts of drugs will say, like, an opening of another part of their mind, a different way of seeing the world, all that kind of thing. They, if doctors all went to the hospital now and experimented with their own drugs, it probably wouldn't be looked upon.
Well, Do you know about ayahuasca and DMT?
I'm not sure.
I think there are a lot of people in the world right now who are taking these. They're psychedelics, drugs. They're natural. Well, ayahuasca is, and I think DMT is a derivative of, from ayahuasca, which is found in the Amazon jungle. And there are a lot of people, like you said, like these doctors, taking these drugs. Probably
Now.
the same way now. Yeah, proponents of opening your mind to a higher consciousness, or
I think that it's very easy to sort of think that all this sort of thing happened in the past and it doesn't happen anymore. And it's definitely happening at the moment with psilocybin.
Yes, very similar to ayahuasca and DMT.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, doctors have had a really long history of experimenting on themselves and their families.
well, there are a lot of proponents of these drugs now, but they're not using them in a doctor-patient setting. That I should make that clear. So they're not using it in the same way.
Right. Well, with the psilocybin, apparently they've had some wonderful effects. They are using it clinically, especially for long-term depression. And it's done in a safe way, from what I understand. However, I think Dr. Harry Bailey was a cowboy, and there's cowboys today. There was a Four Corners episode a couple of, maybe a couple of years ago, about psilocybin. You can look it up online. And there was a couple, and the woman was a psychiatrist and the husband was I think they called him like a self-named counselor, something like that. And they would get rape victims and give them the psilocybin. The person that they were treating wouldn't know what was going to happen to them. They wouldn't know that they were going to be so drugged up. And the idea of treating these women who had a fear of sex from being raped was to give them a lot of this drug, and then the husband would have sex with them.
Really?
Yes, and this is happening right now, like right now.
Yeah.
So it's easy to go, oh, that stuff used to happen, back in 1920 or back in 1980, but it's still happening now. You could book an appointment with this woman and think that you're doing the right thing.
Oh my God, that's not a good thing to hear.
No.
Okay. Look, I'm going to change this a little bit. The cover of your book made out to look like a magazine cover. So I have to say, the background, I had curtains exactly that.
Yeah.
I've got a photo. It's probably on my phone. No, it's not on my phone. I was going to show you, like, with me in front of those curtains.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kate, the main character of the story, she is obsessed with Cleo.
Yeah.
And she wants to be a magazine editor. She wants to be Ida Buttrose. And she used to make her own little mock magazines, which I think we did a lot of that, before the internet. We'd cut out pictures and stick them on things and that sort of thing when we were teenagers. And that cover that you say, looked like your curtains. I also thought it reminded me of a story, very old story called The Yellow Wallpaper. And again, it was like a husband telling the wife that she's sick, keeping her in this room. It has yellow wallpaper, patterns on the yellow wallpaper. And she's in there for so long, days, weeks, I'm not sure, that she sees people and creatures in this yellow wallpaper. So I kind of thought, yeah, it looks 70s, but also maybe it's reminiscent of the yellow wallpaper a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, well, I used to see eyes in my curtain.
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah.
We all did. So how long do we need to be locked in there to see more than eyes? How long till they start talking to us?
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Oh my God.
I say that we're all only a couple of weeks from madness.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, like people who have been sort of kidnapped and sort of retrained, brainwashed They say that, you can crack someone 12 weeks, I guess,
Anyone, is that anyone or?
I don't know. They haven't done it to me
You've got to
yet.
speak to someone who's done that.
Yeah. Yeah. The things that.
Or been through that.
Yeah. Like, withholding food, withholding water, withholding light.
Light would be a very, very scary one for me.
Yeah.
Because I've actually, as teenagers, when you muck around, I've actually run in stormwater drains.
Oh, right.
And when you go around a bend,
oh no,
it is dark.
Yes.
But that's the thrill. You see, that's why we did it. That's the thrill.
Yes.
So you imagine, and there are pipes coming off to your left and right. So probably rats in there and things going past your leg. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The things you imagine are probably worse than the things that are there. Oh, who knows? Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah. You just couldn't wait to get out of there, but you pretend that you were brave.
Yes.
It was fun. Didn't let anybody know.
Yeah.
So you're holding on to the first person in front of you going left, right, left, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You have to do it. You have to follow along.
Yep. This is fun. It's freaking scary. So I know that the dark, complete darkness freaks me out.
Yeah.
I'd give you anything. I'd do anything for you.
In almost an opposite way, if I was put in a room that was always light, I'd do anything for the dark.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I can't sleep with the light on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I wanted to know how your upbringing informed your Kate character, the 17-year-old. Is there anything of you and her?
I think she is what I would have liked to have been. I have actually thought, she had long blonde hair and, popular, the boys liked her. And she goes through some trauma and I'm like, am I still upset about those girls in high school that I did this to a fake character? So I don't think she personally was anything like my life, but I think the school was.
Right.
Yeah. I think some of the incidents in the school were, and, what happens with friends and friendship groups and that kind of thing were. But she definitely wasn't me.
Yeah, because about the friendship, you wrote, so Kate's friendships do bother me. You wrote, there was Kate, Sue, and Frances. And with the only 5 girls left from Kate's childhood posse still at school, our girls stuck together. So although they may have hated each other, they became friends. And I just wrote, linked by the ambition when others had left school for jobs, etc.
Yeah, and that time, a lot of girls didn't stay on. And a lot of girls had the same names as each other. If you remember from school, there were always, multiple Michelles and Kylies and, Tanyas.
Well, what worried me about this and these friendships in school is now, to be honest, I didn't have met very many friends.
Yeah.
I did, if any. I would call them acquaintances now.
Yeah.
So, and to this day, I'm not sure how to have friendships. I still don't know how. And it gives me comfort when I watch American Hollywood high school movies when friends are really true to each other, because I want it to be like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm also seduced by those friendships in American movies. And I think that we have this thing that we no longer have for romantic relationships where, your friend from high school is going to be your friend for life, thick and thin.
Yeah. You
can get divorced. They can turn gay. It doesn't matter. You're going to be friends for life. And I think I've been a victim of that, actually, when, friendship, like my high school friend who didn't end up being my friend anymore, took me longer to get over that than any romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's something I still ponder about now. These friends you had in high school that weren't friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it, you're in a group that, some of the people in that group you may not have anything in common with, but you're in that group and you'd rather be in a group than not in a group. So
I wasn't in a group. I always wanted to be in a group. I wasn't in a group, Meg.
That's probably why I like you so much.
But I wanted to be in a group. I just didn't know how to be in a
I
group.
tried very hard to be in different groups at different times. And you know what? In each group, I was really bored. I much preferred
Really?
one-on-one. Yeah.
I think that's probably why I gravitated towards team sport.
Right.
But even in my teams, I was still not part of
Yes.
um,
And you know, you can
of the group.
feel it without anyone saying or doing anything. You
Yeah.
can feel it if you don't belong, can't you?
Yeah.
It's
And
so important.
so I think there's something wrong with me. I still think there is.
I'm not going there.
I don't care, though. I don't care about exploring it because it is what it is. You know,
Yeah.
I don't care anymore.
I think, you know, you probably didn't try as hard as I did to conform.
I didn't think about that. I think you're right. Okay. So after that, I want to talk about the mother character now. You know, about her dyeing her hair blonde after her daughter was born. I'm always interested in mothers in particular for my own personal reasons, as and fathers too, but not as much as I'm interested in mothers and mother characters and mothers in general, and especially mothers from the 50s, 60s, 70s.
They are interesting mothers. I'm interested in mothers from fairy tales.
Okay, yeah.
Snow White, for example. There was a big competition between Snow White and her mother, whether Snow White was aware of it or not. Who's the most beautiful? Who's the most beautiful of all? And I think that to your husband and maybe to other people, you are the most beautiful until you produce a daughter.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you get older and your daughter gets older, she's going to surpass you in beauty. And some women fight, as we know, so hard against that. Botox and hair dye and but that, you know, what is it, the glow of youth.
Yeah. Do you think it happens? It's more prevalent now.
I think
because we've got, you know, women that just have so much available to us to change the way we look, makeup, injections, surgeries, things like that.
And it's more acceptable. I think if you have got a breast implant surgery, you know, 20 years ago, you might be the only person people would look at you, but you know, now you can have the biggest lips, and it's not mandatory, definitely, but
the strangeness of looking a certain way from surgeries is now acceptable. We've gotten used to it.
Yeah. Although people have always modified themselves in some way or another, but yeah, I think that trying to look young, modification, yeah, it's a massive industry.
So going back to Kate's mum, do you think a lot of mothers were like Kate's mother?
In what way?
I don't think she took much interest in her daughter. Only that this is what I think, that Kate, her daughter, is a reflection of her.
Yeah.
Or she wanted to reflect Kate. Wanted to be Kate.
Wanted to be Kate. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm generalizing, of course.
I can't remember what your question was.
Do you think mothers were like that during this time?
I mean, I think that there was a lot more, you know, we didn't have
this particular class, for want of a better word.
Yeah, we didn't have the helicopter parenting that we have now. She would almost be considered abusive in her absence, I guess now. But back then, I think parents didn't pay. They had their own social lives. They didn't pay as much attention to what was going on, I don't think, with their daughters. But, you know, I'm getting that from pop culture and movies and what people have told me rather than personal experience.
Personal experience would say you're correct. So do you think Kate's parents failed her?
Sure. But I think in the same way that all parents fail. I think that one of the reasons they failed is, um, if you've had a teenager, they are hard work.
Mm.
And if a doctor and person in authority said to you, we'll just put them to sleep for a couple of weeks, it'll reset their brain. They're going to come back without the attitude. They're going to come back wanting to do their homework. They're going to come back being respectful and happy.
Mm.
Gee, I reckon most people would be putting their hands up. And I think that blind acceptance of authority, particularly from a medical person, was more prevalent then. But
okay, let me reframe that. So you're right. One, there's that aspect of you respect titles, especially doctors. Anyone who had a title, you just blindly accepted what they said as being true.
Definitely.
Secondly, if I came to you and you had a wayward daughter and you just, felt like you couldn't cope or whatever it was, and I said to you that I could get her well in 2 weeks, who wouldn't take it?
Yeah. And also you get 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
You're exhausted parent.
And it doesn't seem that long.
No. However, I think, people have questioned things forever. Why did they even think the daughter needed to go to a place like this? Like, I mean, you can read the book yourself and see whether you think she needed.
I did read the book.
Madness intervention for her madness, or whether she was a teenager. It's very hard to tell the difference sometimes. I know.
Having been one. Look, I was surprised. I must admit that she was thought of as being mad or even having a breakdown. I thought it was just how a teenager would behave.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And I think I think that if you go back to what really happened at that time, people were put under deep sleep therapy for less than her behaviour. So at first I wanted to make her much more innocent and just sort of walk into this oops of this doctor. But I think she had to have some kind of, had to be able to question her at some point. But yeah, people would put their children under for much less. And so it's very strange.
So not all coming of age stories are like what they portray in Hollywood movies.
In what way? Happy ending?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or something profound. Yeah, happy endings. So Kate's coming of age story is very tragic.
I think that it was very hard to, as I said, it's based on true stories. It's very hard to make it tragic because we all want the happy ending. It would have been so easy to give her a happy ending in so many different ways. But it would have been, I think, really disrespectful for the people who did go through this treatment because, the ones that did survive, a lot of them ended up addicted to the drugs they were being given. A lot of them ended up suiciding within a year. And a lot of them, most of them, their lives were tragic after, they never ever got over this treatment. And so how disrespectful would I be if I gave her a nice happy ending, she rides off with a guy or gets a great career or whatever you think her great ending is. But my girlfriend did read it and she said, couldn't you have just, did you have to end it like that?
And you say, yeah, I did because it's based on a true story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that the sexual attention that Kate got from men from everywhere during this period was common during that period? And do you think that it happens still today for young girls?
Yes and yes. I think that, as I said, she was long blonde hair, nice breasts, that kind of thing. And I remember it was a slightly different time, but I remember, once you are sort of 16 and starting to wear a bit of makeup and that kind of thing, you're probably wearing it to attract the 15-year-old boy in your class, but you're attracting the, 55-year-old guy who lives next door. You're not purposely doing it, of course, but yeah, like male attention, male attraction. Yeah, and to this day, as soon as my daughter hit puberty, you notice grown men with their wives in the shopping centre looking at them. Things happen to them, getting followed home. I'm not going to go into her personal life, but yeah, definitely. I don't think a lot has changed in that way, other than the acceptability of it. I think, the old pinch on the bum. We might go, oh no, that's terrible, but it doesn't mean the pinch doesn't happen.
Do you think there's a prevailing thought from men that women like it? Like the attention?
I don't know if they even think about what the women like. Maybe they just think about that juicy bottom between their fingers.
Okay.
I don't know if the woman's thoughts about it come into it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'll have to find a bottom pincher and ask him.
I've not, it could be due to my age, seen a bottom pincher for, I can't remember when.
I think it's more of a, those subtle things that, you walk into a doorway and the guy doesn't move, so you have to slide your body against his. So it's slightly more subtle, but still that's body-to-body contact that you weren't really wanting.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. Yuck. It's always from the yucky ones too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably because the good-looking ones don't need to. I
Yeah.
have no idea. I'm just making that up. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Mm,
This might need more investigation.
think so. Look, The Age wrote a review about your book. They said Vertigan is excellent at differentiating narrative voice, and her debut offers an acutely observed coming-of-age story mixed with an unsettling examination of how power imbalance, regressive gender politics, and institutional misogyny can play into psychiatry and its professional ethics. So I want to talk to you about some of these things and ask the question, are we looking at these issues through a modern lens? I don't think you made any judgment calls about any of the following, but rather just told the story as impartially as possible, as much can be, although everything we write is subjective. I don't get a strong sense of judgment here from you.
Judgment of what?
Like your own personal slant on judging these issues like power imbalance. You sort of state this happened, that happened, but you're not saying this was wrong or this was anything like that.
True.
So let's talk about power imbalance first.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's her school principal, there's the doctor, who obviously have more power over her. But then I think that there's also men that have little power, and one of them's her father. And if you go back to Snow White, it was never actually, going back to the mother in Snow White, it was never actually a stepmother originally. It was the real mother.
Right.
And so I think that makes it interesting that it was the real mother. But it became a stepmother because it was,
More palatable.
yeah, to make them evil. And a lot of those stepmothers in fairy tales were actually the real mother. The evil stepmother was actually the real mother. But it sort of changed over time. But the father, I think he was a pretty wimpy guy. And a lot of fathers in fairy tales are too.
Yeah,
like if you think of Snow White, like what was the father doing?
Yeah.
And so I don't think all the men were powerful and all the women were weak.
Okay.
I think I might have sort of gone sideways on what your question was, though.
You're making me think about what I asked. The power imbalance. What do they say?
She doesn't. But she isn't.
I think
submissive to the power,
maybe
though.
it's her power.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any power. Everyone else has power. She doesn't have any.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a strong sense of agency. I believe, as well. So maybe that's where the power imbalance lies.
Yeah, and I think that young girls do try and use, not saying all young girls, not all young girls, hashtag, use their sexuality or their sex, their attractiveness as power, but some do. And I think that Kate did try to use her, sexual attraction to get what she wanted. And sometimes that works and sometimes it just doesn't. And I think that she questioned things too. So she wasn't just submissive.
No, what I mean is, okay, you're right. You're right about that. But by the time she ends up in hospital, by the time she goes to hospital, the decision isn't hers to go.
Oh, no.
She's not even been told about it.
No.
And while she's there, her coming in and out is nothing. She has no power.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero. She becomes a nothing, a meat bag.
An annoyance.
A better word. Yeah.
Yeah. True.
So,
and I guess she's even lost her attractiveness pretty much by then too.
Yeah.
And the questioning everything. Yeah.
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 Like there's no power at all for patients.
No.
I don't know how true that holds today either.
Well, I know that with the deep sleep therapy, there was, more than one patient, but one guy in particular, he said, I don't want this deep sleep therapy. And so the nurses said to him, here, we'll make you a cup of tea or coffee. Maybe it was coffee, and they drugged it. So he woke up weeks later having gone through deep sleep therapy and electroshock treatment.
Because you do say that in your book, don't you? At the end, towards the end, when he's going through the court.
Yeah. And so I don't think obviously that would happen now. But how much information are we given because information's power, isn't it? I'm just thinking,
but it all comes back to that thing of madness though, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy. I'm not anti-psychiatry or anti-drugs, but very easy to go and get yourself on antidepressants.
Okay.
I think.
I don't know.
I remember a girl at school, at uni, and we're all having a coffee and she popped off to the doctor and came back and she'd gotten some antidepressants.
Wow.
And I said, well, did they test your brain? And she said, no, I just told them how I felt. And I was like, naive, obviously, but also really shocked because none of us knew she was depressed. I'm not saying she wasn't. None of us knew that she was. And it just seemed like such a simple transaction, such a simple...
You actually reminded me of something just now. Was this the time during which women were taking Bex as well, or was that the 50s, or was it during this time also?
Bex, I think, was before this time.
Right.
I think it was 50s. Yeah. Bex and A Good Lie Down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just proves that housework's boring. You can't... You can make as many TV shows about it as you like, but without some Bex and A Good Lie Down, you really don't have a life. I think that women and craziness, and I'm not saying that men aren't made out to be crazy as well, but how many people do you know that their female exes were crazy? They were all crazy, according to the ex.
True.
And
it's true.
Yeah, this crazy woman that I used to work with, this crazy, and then I'm like, oh, this woman I work with, she's a bit OCD, or she's a bit this, or she's a bit that. We love to diagnose each other.
The other thing I've heard about women too, that men say when they don't like a woman for some reason or another, and especially women in power who have power, they say she's dangerous.
She's dangerous.
Have you ever heard of that?
Dangerous. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
And so a way of making her less dangerous is to...
I don't know. Because every time I've said why,
it's obviously not a physical danger like a gun.
No. It's the power they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've never gotten a clear answer as to why.
Oh, I'd love to
why.
delve into that more.
Yeah.
And then perhaps by saying they're crazy, you take that fear of them away a little bit.
You diminish them.
Because misogyny...
If they make a decision you don't like, it's, you've got to question it. It's based on something else. You've got to scrutinize everything they do.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, that's one I've heard.
It's interesting because, if you're a racist, isn't that supposedly a fear of the race? So if you're misogynistic, is that not a fear of women? And then if you're coming back to these men saying that women are dangerous or women in power are dangerous, it's true then that it's a fear more than a hatred,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Or fear of you don't control women.
Or even a fear that they control themselves.
Yeah. Because, we're the weaker sex.
I mean, one
And we're not talking about now people. We're talking about back when.
back when, or are we talking now? One thing that women don't have power over is their reproductive rights. I know women that some of them as well that never want to have children, but they're not allowed to get a hysterectomy because the doctor says you'll change your mind. You'll meet somebody.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. But
I know 18-year-olds that have had vasectomies.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Do you think that, because a lot of, especially one male person I know argues that women do have control over their reproductive rights from the 60s, from the pill, when we got the pill.
Okay.
And this is an argument I've seen lately where, the world has a declining population birth rate.
Right.
In the Western world, sorry.
Yes.
Particularly in the Western world. And I would put China in there as well.
Yeah.
It's Japan, China, and most of the Western world.
Japan, definitely. It's a big thing. Yeah.
And somebody I listened to on a podcast lately explained that it was because women had control over their reproductive rights, which was the pill, since the pill came out.
Well,
and since women had, control over that, they didn't they didn't need to have children. They didn't. So women found doing other things, they'd rather do other things than be a stay-at-home mum and have children.
Right.
And you don't need to rely on your husband for income anymore as well. So women were off in the world doing what they wanted to do. And that was the reason that, part of the reason why these countries had less and less babies.
I probably agree, but I'm failing to realize what the problem with that is.
And I should explain a little bit further as well that also men had no control over the reproductive rights of women, but he asserts that men also didn't step up and become more and be more to reproduce, to be the men that these women or women want to have babies with.
Yeah, I think that whole knowledge is power, and women now realize that they don't have to just pop out a heap of kids, that they'll do it when they're ready, when they've done what they want to do. And even then they might still want to go to work. And
But this means that quite often, especially in the Western world, women are too old to have babies. They've passed their reproductive years.
Unknowingly.
Not
Meaning to. Sure, that does happen. Yeah.
But I don't. To me, there's a bigger picture involved, which I won't get into now.
Yeah, much bigger picture.
Yeah, which I've only. This is maybe just one tiny bit of a larger picture, but yeah. I've gone off topic now. I forgot where we were. So let's get back on to regressive gender politics, I suppose.
Okay,
that's probably what we were just talking about.
We went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We definitely did.
So let's talk a little bit about institutional misogyny. You've already talked about it a little bit in psychiatry and its professional ethics.
Sorry, my brain's somewhere else.
What are you thinking about?
I was thinking about where you said, are we looking through these issues with a modern lens?
Yes.
And I think that you have to, because it's what you know.
Right.
And you can try not to, but I think that every period drama that's made now, you look at the new Little Women from 2019, and Amy has a big spat at one of the male characters that he's sort of looking down on her because she wants a wealthy husband. And she really gives it to him and says, well, economically, what else am I supposed to do as a woman? And I'm like, that wasn't in the original.
Yeah, yeah.
We always, it's always going to have a bit of now in there. But I also do think that it wasn't that long ago, and there are pockets, like we look at the 1970s as, free love and all that kind of thing. But if you live in a little pocket like I did growing up, or a little pocket like Beecroft, which is a dry suburb in Sydney, they weren't running around in their hippie clothes there. They were conservative people in a conservative neighbourhood that would have been, as similar to the 1950s in a lot of ways.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Now, what were you saying?
Institutional misogyny.
Well, it's not very long ago. Oh, no, I can't say that.
We can skip that one if you want to. Because I know nothing about psychiatry or how it was. I know in the 70s it was probably in its infancy. I suppose
I know that when Harry Bailey became a psychiatrist, there's different levels of doctor, and which ones are glamorous or which ones are thought of as being, the best, smartest went to. And at that time it was coronary heart.
Right.
And psychiatry was kind of looked down upon, like, if you get really good marks, why would you want to, in your medical degree, because you have to have a medical degree first. Yeah. Why would you want to specialise in psychiatry?
Yeah.
So that was one of the questions with, Dr. Bailey, that was supposedly so bright and so smart, is why did he want to do psychiatry? So it may not have been attracting the best and brightest.
Well, let's talk a little bit about misogyny. What does it mean?
Misogyny. Okay.
Isn't it you hate women?
You hate women.
You hate women.
I never really thought that was a thing, but, obviously looking at the internet these days, it really is. I follow a few female comedians, and I know you shouldn't look at the comments. I know. But so many comments from guys saying women aren't funny. Women aren't funny. 10, 20 on every female comedian, and you're like, either you really believe there's no funny women, or you just hate her. She shouldn't be up there speaking about whatever she's speaking about. But I wonder whether it's a fear of women. I think that,
or maybe they just can't relate.
Maybe they can't relate.
Humor's subjective.
Yeah,
or one person thinks it's funny.
And let's face it, often female comedians are talking about childbirth and periods and menopause and things that you may not relate to. Yeah.
It could be that. I think I believe there are very, very few people in the world who are misogynistic. I think in our modern world, it's funny calling it modern today, people throw that word around.
Probably, yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
Without really understanding what it means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I've got it here is because this person in The Age gave you that review, which I find a little lazy, as I've said to you. Just thrown.
I'm looking at institutional misogyny. Yeah.
I think they've put it in there because it just sounds good, and it's probably a word that's just bandied about too much. So maybe I shouldn't have included that in here. But
no, it's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? Yeah, definitely an interesting concept that it's the hatred of women that does this, and I don't
because you yourself,
hatred's the right word.
I don't think so too, because you said that there were men.
Oh yeah,
in there as well.
Definitely men, and I chose a woman's story because I know more about women's madness. But there were many men in there. There were famous men in there. Yeah, definitely. It's not a woman's story. My story, I might have done it from a female perspective, but it's not a women's story. It's a man's story too. The guy that I was talking about who had his drink drugged, he was a model, and he had some kind of plastic surgery done, and he was unhappy with it. And so when you go to your lawyers, I guess, to say, I'm going to sue this plastic surgeon, they always send you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist to make their case bigger. How did this plastic surgery have an effect on you that isn't just physical?
Right.
And that's how a lot of these people, and that's how he met or came into contact with Harry Bailey. So, yeah, that's a man's story. There's a lot of men's stories.
So I believe that it's the age that's at fault for giving you a review like that. So I think they should pick their game up.
I'm glad you're using the word the age and not the actual author of that comment.
No.
I was so happy I got a happy review and you're tearing it to shreds.
It's a great review. It's a great review. Okay, look, I think the 70s was a very sexually charged era.
Yeah.
And for me, there's a tight tension in your book, or I call it I forget it, that runs throughout your story for me. So I don't know if it's my imagination or if there is one, but I think there is one.
I think so too. I think that
undertow.
Yeah. I think that one thing that I think about a lot is that in society, I don't know, you're probably going to, I don't know, but there is a thing that men are the horny ones. And women are sort of coerced into having sex or forced into having sex or talked into having sex. And it's like, have you not been a 15-year-old girl? We have incredible libidos. And
that's a male view of what a woman's libido is, sexuality, especially when you're a young girl. You know, especially by older men, teenage boys. When you're a teenage boy, you know girls want it just as much as you.
Do you?
Do you? I don't know. You tell me.
I don't think a teenage boy. I don't know. We'll have to go to teenage boy here and ask him.
You tell me. I don't know.
I don't know either. I imagine that teenage boys think that they've got to do the work to get her to want to do it. That she might not. I don't know. I think there is the idea that women don't get horny still. And it is a new idea because if you look at Shakespeare, all the men were called cuckolds because apparently all the women were cheating on them because they couldn't help themselves. But and we've changed, I think, a lot to thinking that women don't want sex. But if you speak to the wives of your friends or, to women, they're often the ones begging their hubby, come on, honey, you're not tired again, are you? They're the ones wanting, actually, I was talking to a friend the other day. We were in the swimming pool and we were talking about harems for some reason because I was saying there's a romance type writer and she writes about reverse harems, which is obviously one woman, lots of men. And then she said to me, I don't understand why men could want a harem. They can't even keep one woman satisfied. How do they think they want threesomes or anything and they can't keep one satisfied? And I was like, yeah, like we really do have that idea that women aren't horny and women are horny.
So you think even today that teenage boys wouldn't know that girls are just as horny as they are?
Maybe once they start doing things, but before that they might think that they've got to. I don't know. I'm not a 15-year-old boy. I could ask my son, but I don't think he's going to answer me.
What I'm going to say is if this is going to go on YouTube, if there's any young man out there who'd like to tell us what you think, please write in the comment. Let us know.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that'll be really great.
Yeah, we would love.
Let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, let us into your brains.
No, not that far. We may not want to go there. Okay, what I think about sex in the 70s, that it was more sensual than I think it is now. Like, now we have a lot of plethora of medium by which to go and access sex. And even dating apps and things like that. Is it Grindr where you get together? I don't know. I'm not.
Grindr's the
gay one.
Gay one, I think.
What's the other one that's similar to that? Anyway, you get together, you meet up for sex, and I don't know. In the 70s, which I think comes through in your book, there's this feeling. There's sex, yeah, sure, There's a sensuality about it as well.
Mm. When you're talking about mediums, are you talking about pornography?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to something the other day that was saying that.
But even, OnlyFans.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was listening to something the other day that said that, you know, a lot of it was a high percentage of young guys, or having sex for the first time are expecting anal sex, and they're expecting it from their 16-year-old virgin girlfriends or 15, 14-year-old virgin girlfriends, and that was just very different from the pashing, the boob touching that went on for months beforehand. Yeah. I don't know. I hope there's still some boob touching and pashing.
Yeah, what I mean is like
or do you mean more of just the sensuality?
Sensuality and love and connection.
Oh, like love into it.
Yeah. Well, when you're young, you perceive it as love and you feel intensely and you think it's love, but when you grow up, it's not. But these feelings are so much more intense when you're younger, and usually by the time you have sex, you've been fantasizing about this person.
Yeah.
For a long time, looking at them and wondering, and by the time you get there, you do have that touch. You've touched them for the first time, and that's thrilling. You kiss them, that's thrilling. Whereas these days, I think it's more perfunctory. More as a more like an exercise, because you've had all this information about sex that's readily available, and like you said, when you get to your first one, they expect anal sex. So where's this?
Maybe we've lost something.
Yeah. When you were like just lying next to a boy, it was nice. You didn't even have to have sex. You're leading up to it, but just you're not there yet, and you got all your clothes on, and it's very sensual, and it's
and it's also you're feeling quite safe.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I was lucky, but I never felt unsafe in those situations. I felt like I could stop anything anytime I wanted to.
Because I think that comes through in your book,
right?
And I think it comes through because even when Kate does have sex, she's not being raped or or forced or any of those things. So there's still that or being coerced in a way that's influenced by seeing things like anal sex.
Yeah.
Or eating ass.
Yes.
Any of that stuff. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not influenced by that.
I don't want to say that kind of sex is ugly, but it's something different from beautiful. From passion and lust to something, I'm not really quite sure the word I want, but
because I think you've captured that in your book, probably without realizing it.
There's so many things that can happen in writing that you don't realize that you're doing. Like you certainly don't do on purpose. And that would be one if that's what you read it. And I'm like, I can see that, but I didn't intend that at all.
Yeah,
and it's nice. It's nice when someone finds something that it wasn't planned. So much of it you plan and plot. And
well, think about the scene where she's sitting on the grass, and I forget what you call him now. Her lover, comes and sits on the grass with her.
Yeah,
that's very tender. That's very soft. With the light, the dawn, and sitting on the grass, and all of that is evocative.
Those times, Mother, where you're sitting next to someone and you're not sure if you're just talking or not, and you edge closer, or they edge closer. Did they edge closer? Did I edge closer? And it's so much anticipation, and you're not quite sure. And is that happening until like you might be just touching me, but maybe that's accidental.
That's Mills and Boons.
Maybe it is a bit Mills and Boone, but it happened in my teenage years.
Yeah. I don't know if it happens now.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you captured that really well for the time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. Like I said, whether you think you did or didn't, or whether or not you were aware of it, or if you meant that to happen, I think it captured it
Yeah.
really well.
I guess there's something about making a character, I don't know if innocent's the right word, but naive, but also doing things sexually. Because you don't have to be a virgin to be innocent.
Mm.
You know, you can be quite an innocent person and have had sex with several people, but you still are learning so many things about life and sex and love, and, you know, you can still be quite naive.
You don't have to answer this, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I'm not sure I want to answer it as well. Your first time,
Mm.
what was it like?
Quite terrifying because I was raised very religiously, and, you know, you could go to hell.
Mm.
I'm not going to talk about mine necessarily, but I'll talk about a friend of mine's, and he's a guy.
Mm.
And he was raised very religiously, and he had a very beautiful girlfriend. And he was actually gay. Everyone knew he was gay except for him. But, you know, later on he discovered this. But, you know, he had this very beautiful girlfriend, and, you know, she wanted sex. She was gagging for it. And you know, they're sort of doing everything but, and she's just like, just stick it in kind of thing. And he said that, you know, he was raised in evangelical church, and he was raised to believe that there's all these sort of demons around you telling you to do this terrible thing. And I don't know if he thought he was going to explode or what if he stuck it in. I mean, he did.
Yeah.
And they did have sex, but he said it was
Terrified.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's going to come out and evil.
Yeah. So I think the only way around that is to have a lot of alcohol involved. You know?
We know that happens often. People drink a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Because to get
the courage. It's not that
not even just the courage. I know someone who wanted something from someone. I'm not going to say the story specifically because they listen to this and they'll probably hear it and I don't want them to hear it.
Yeah.
They wanted something from this person.
Yeah.
So in order for them to get the something, they had
a certain
to
sexual thing.
No, they didn't want a sexual thing. They wanted something else.
Oh, okay.
So the person said to them, to get the other thing, they had to have sex.
Oh, okay.
So this person...
Are they males, females?
No, female, male. So this person who wanted the thing wasn't attracted to the one who wanted sex.
Which one wanted sex, the female or the male?
The male.
The male, okay.
So to get through it, they had to drink almost a bottle of rum or some such to be able to do the deed.
I've often wondered that about male prostitutes because, you know, female prostitute, there's lubrication and an imagination. But as a male, you have to presumably have an erection. And presumably numerous times a day. So, and, you know, a female can have absolutely no attraction to a guy.
If you were a male prostitute for a woman or male?
For either, I think.
I suppose it probably depends if you're top or bottom, doesn't it, for male?
Oh, okay, yeah. But if let's say it's women then, like, they're going to have one client a day, or are they, you know, if they're attracted to them, if they're not attracted to them, can they still get an erection?
Yeah.
If there's any male prostitutes listening to this, please put your comments.
Please. Okay, this segues really nicely into you writing for Playboy.
Beautiful.
So I know you said that you had to write from a male perspective, which is what we're just talking about now.
Right, yes.
So let's discuss that a little bit.
Okay, so these were the letters that you could write into Playboy for $250. And they were all written by men, funnily enough. And so, yes, I guess I did have to have a male perspective, but I think that I don't know how much of a girl I am. It's very easy for me to put myself into that male physical sexual energy.
Mm.
Because whenever they say women think this and men think that, I'm always the wrong way around.
Right.
Or I'm always like, I used to go, women don't think like that. And then one day I realized that a lot of them do. I just don't.
Mm.
So I don't know if I got it wrong, but they published it. It was a story, to write those stories, I would listen to my friends and their exploits and use them. But it was a female that told me about it. So it was her exploit. But yeah, I did write it from the male perspective. Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I feel like male writers, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to say it anyway. Male writers forever have written female characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that female writers often write female characters, but then I realize I'm wrong because I'm thinking Harry Potter and those sorts of things. Women write men as well, so yeah, ignore me.
Well, there's Stephanie Miles with Twilight. Did she write?
Yeah.
What do you think of the male characters there? I didn't read it either. I just saw the movies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, he was quite effeminate, wasn't he?
Do you think Edward? Is that who it is?
I only saw a movie and he wasn't a big, strong, macho man. Maybe that's something to do with a woman writing it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I do know that when I read certain things like Lila in the Middle.
I don't know. So you can say you're looking it up. So who's the character that you're looking up?
I'm looking up just so I get it right. Lola in the Middle, not Layla in the Middle.
Oh, okay.
And it's by Trent Dalton. And it's about a young teenage homeless girl. Well, she lives in a van with her mother, or a woman who she believes to be her mother. And I'm sorry, I knew it was a guy writing it. Just by some of the ways she behaved around a boy, some of the things she wasn't concerned about. That I'm sorry, if you're a woman and you're homeless, there's certain things that you need to take care of. Let's put it that way. I've read things where, and I guess it's about doing your research, isn't it? There was a woman on the run, and she runs into a bathroom and dyes her dark hair blonde in half an hour and goes back out in the run. I'm like, anyone who's tried to dye black hair blonde in half an hour with no evidence and coming out with sleek blonde hair.
That's pretty amazing. That's supersedes everything we know.
Yeah. So maybe it's just do your research.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not very hard to do.
I did talk to the guy, the girl's, partner, that this activity that I used in my stories.
Yeah.
I did have his physical feelings. So maybe it is just about I love research, and I love I don't know, like when I'm teaching creative writing, if someone says that they were driving a Mazda down the road and it was bright yellow, I'll literally Google if there was a Mazda in that year that was bright yellow.
Really?
Yeah. And if there wasn't.
What did you think of our stories then? Because everyone, Meg was my tutor at university.
I thought some of them were great, but some of them I had to do a little bit of research. There's one that I think is hilarious, and I actually met Christos Tzolkis at a writers' festival in Newcastle.
Right.
And I've been a fan of Christos Tzolkis for a long time. Although I do have to say, and he would probably just laugh if I said this, that I find his books, like, I don't love them, but I have to read them. Like, when you're driving along, you see a car crash and you have to look.
Yeah.
That's how I find his stories. I have to read them. But
in a good way.
It's
not a car.
It's a compulsion. It's a compulsion. I don't know.
Is it the way he writes?
Yeah, definitely, I think. But his first book, Loaded, we did at uni when I was at uni. And it was a young boy and he had a bag of speed. think a $50 bag of speed,
Mm.
and he had some lines. And then he went to someone's house and he shared some with them.
Mm.
Then he went to someone else's house and shared some with them. Then he went to a party and shared it with everyone. And I was like,
Wow.
$50 bag of
That's a
speed.
lot.
Yeah. And so when I met him, I said this to him. He was just laughing. I was
What
like,
did he say?
I think he just said, I should have done more research on that one or something. I can't remember what he said, but he did think it was quite funny. And I was like, yeah, there's the things that if you're not a drug taker,
What does it say about you?
you might need to. Oh, come on. We all had to write our our essays the night before at some point in time. Some of my friends might have done things that I observed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, okay. Never touched my lip. Never inhaled.
Never inhaled.
Okay. Well,
Swallowed.
so you mentioned the festival. Oh, Meg. So you mentioned
Sorry.
Okay. So you mentioned I've got a small mind, don't forget.
Don't we all?
Words on the Waves Festival.
Oh, yes. I actually mentioned Newcastle Writers Festival, but
Newcastle Writers. Okay.
yeah, that was it.
That's different. That's
Yeah,
different from
that's Newcastle.
okay.
So the Words on the Waves is our own local festival on the Central Coast.
Yep.
Yes.
How did you get involved?
Well, it was funny because I got a call from somebody at the uni saying they wanted somebody to interview a couple of writers. And they'd had a lot of trouble finding someone, which I found strange because there's a lot of people who are interested in creative writing at the uni, but, everyone's busy as well. So I jumped at the chance. Next thing, 3 books come in the mail that are big, heavy tomes. And I had like a week to read them all. And I'd never interviewed anyone before either. So, and they weren't unknown people. So, yeah. But I loved, you front up that day and there's, 4 chairs on the stage and you have to get onto one. You can't just run out of the room. You have to get up there and you have to ask your questions.
Was the audience already there?
The audience?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they sort of had one panel after another. So the audience,
right.
Oh, they did sort of get up and move around to different rooms.
Yeah.
But yeah, most
Basically you're just swapping out.
Yeah, and I think that we were in the room where the bar was as well. So it was sort of the big room that people sort of hung out in as well. So yeah, there was a nice audience there. So yeah, you have to get up there and you have to do it.
Do you suffer from nerves?
I do. Well, I haven't done that before. Yeah. So yes, definitely that time. But even as a teacher in classrooms, like sometimes you've really got to make yourself walk through that door. Especially maybe if you've had a class that didn't work as well as you'd wanted to the day before. I know some people just don't care, but I care about each one. So, yeah. My first class that I taught at the uni, and I'd already been teaching for quite a few years at language centres, but my first class I taught at the uni, I looked in the window, saw all the students sitting there, ready, and I went back to my office and I was going to tell my boss that I just
couldn't do it.
And then I thought, well, I can't do that. So then I walked back and I did it. And I'm glad I did because, but yeah, it's terrifying getting up in front of people for sure.
Yeah.
But then I love it at the same time, like interviewing those people. And then I've had the opportunity to do it a couple of other times since.
How much prep did you do and what did you prep? Because I'm asking this for me.
Well, with that one, I'm not a fast reader. And so I had these 3 big books to read in a week. So I read every word of the first one. And then the other 2, the next one I'm reading most of it, and it comes to a couple of days before. And I've got to, because you've also got to, you can't just read the books. Like Louis Narrow was one of the people I was interviewing, and he's a playwright. And he did Cosy and, other things. And so I loved that movie, Cosy. And it had a really great, one of my favourite lines in it was, actually it's set in a mental institution. And one of the guise as a pyromaniac. And he's up. I just remember him. It's David Wenham, actually,
Right.
the actor, and he's up in a window, and the cops or someone are saying, "Oh, you lit another fire. 'Cause the whole place is on fire," and he goes, "Yeah, I've got a really good Protestant work ethic." And I just thought that was great. So I wanted to watch, it again so I can make sure, is it that movie?
Yeah.
So quite a lot of prep other than just reading the story, because you've got to know a bit about the writer to do their bio. So I actually got a little bit of dirt on him that he fell out with Patrick White, but then he won the Patrick White Award. So I had that little thing to to say, because there are all the little things that it's nice to let the person that you're interviewing know that you've
done some homework.
Yeah, I think it might make them relax a bit.
That you've actually prepared.
But honestly, at the same time, his book was the one that I just happened to read first. And I prepared for him so much more than I could for the others, although one of them I'd read her other books, so that was okay. I just happened to have. Yeah, it's I imagine that people who are interviewing people all the time, there's going to be times when they've got to wing it to a certain stage. Look up Wikipedia and do your best, but it's so much better when you can be prepared. I think you're so much less nervous.
It is, and you don't have as many nows, and you don't have to struggle as much. And you're right, you do feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I think some you can connect with, ones that I've been able to, and it didn't happen in that case, but ones that I've been able to have a coffee with first or something like that. So, I don't know, you just get to know them 5 minutes. I can understand why that green room must be so important for...
But interviews don't usually interact with
I think that
people in the green room, though, do they?
I think Andrew Denton used to go and just have a quick chat.
Oh, right. But I love Andrew Denton. He's so quick.
Yeah.
And so smart and so just really intelligent.
Where is he now?
Funny, I don't know.
Andrew Denton, if you're listening to this, I know you live in Patonga, which isn't very far away. Or
I'm not sure if he does live in Patonga anymore, or if it's their holiday home.
Anyway, write something in the comments and we'll come and interview you.
I love him, and I like his wife too.
She's fantastic.
I love her, yeah. I love them both. They're just really, really, really great.
Yeah.
So I went to a writers' festival when I was 17.
Which one was it?
It was in Te Kaha, New Zealand. I think it was Te Kaha. I don't know what the festival was called. It was out in the paddock somewhere with tents set up and things like that. And it kind of put me off writers' festivals.
In what way?
A lot of egos. Too many egos walking about.
Yeah.
And I'm that person that's like, or probably that young, you're so eager, you want to go in.
Yeah.
And you think it's all about sharing and caring.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, stupid 17-year-old.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So,
I mean, there are some egos definitely. When I was at I guess it was an opening night of a writers' festival, and someone, quite famous in Australia, I ran into her at the bar. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. But
so of course you're not going to name names.
No, but she desperately needed someone to
hang on
with. And
we
were even joking that after 2 minutes we're best friends kind of thing. And the photographer came up to take our photo, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting my photo taken with this relatively famous person. But then, so she took our photo, but then just moments after that, a more famous Australian, still Australian, but more famous Australian person walked up. And the person I was with, she couldn't dump me fast enough to get a photo with this other person. And it was funny. But when I looked at the photos of that night, I wasn't in them. The other two were.
Yeah, well, of course.
So, yeah, egos and hierarchy, maybe?
I suppose it happens everywhere.
I guess so.
Yeah, it makes me reticent about going to writers' festivals now.
Yeah, I think that it funny places because...
Look, I've got to say this. I do know that not all authors are like that, because one of my favourite authors that I've seen interviewed, I think his name, what's his name? I had it there a moment ago. No, let's just keep talking. Maybe it'll come back to me.
One thing that I have thought though, having gone to some and seeing somebody and you think they're fantastic, their story's fantastic, they hold the room, a big room,
Wow.
a well-known person, and you're like, this is great, buy their book and struggle through it because it's not badly written, but it's maybe a little bit boring. And you're like, wow.
So you think the book's published on their publicity or personality rather than...
Oh, that can happen, but in one of these cases, no. Although they were famous for something, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it made me realise though too that I guess as a writer now you've got to be able to speak. You can't hide in your little bedroom anymore, right? You've got to be able to sell your book metaphorically, like at these places, and make it seem interesting and pick out the best bit. And like with this particular book, there were two interesting bits in quite a big book.
Yeah.
And they were the two bits that they talked about on the stage. They were, wow, this book's going to be great.
Oh dear.
But, you could have a great book and not be able to communicate that as well. So you can't just be a writer anymore.
It's a bit hard for the introvert, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And they're the writers.
Yeah.
I remember teaching, I had one girl in class years ago. She never said a word, never ever said a word. And then one day she came along with her writing. And all I could say at the end of it, because you had to read it out, each person had to read out their writing at some point in time. And, she'd probably left it till right at the end of semester. And she read it out and there was just silence. And I just went, oh, where's the quiet ones? It was just
beautiful.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And beautiful, yeah. Yeah. That's not always the case, but yeah.
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 It's quite daunting though if you're an introvert or for any writer worth their salt, not every writer, but every writer worth their salt. When you read your story out there, especially if you're for students like you have at uni, putting it out there for the first time.
Yeah,
it's
definitely. I think it's something that, I struggled with at first, but the way I get around it with my little ego or big ego, I don't know, is to write something I'm not happy with. I don't make sure it's okay. I don't make sure it's perfect. Then I'm happy for people to go, oh, what about this? What about that? But if I write something that I think is perfect,
oh, really?
Which is sad, yeah. So I'll bring in the bit that I don't think is working. The conversation
that's interesting.
The conversation that you're like, oh, it sounds so much like I've written it.
Yeah.
Why is this conversation so? And sometimes it can be the tiniest tips, like somebody will say, well, why don't you put a certain item inside the cupboard and then they find it rather than having it on the shelf. Tiny little thing, and you do it. And you go, oh, it's so much better. But you also have to be willing to ignore what people say as well.
You know what will work, what won't work, or what you want to do, because we all write differently, we all think differently.
Yeah, and I think there's sometimes when I don't know if anyone could get better as a writer without putting it out there and getting advice, but some part of you just wants to hide in your room and write.
Yeah.
I'm going through that at the moment. Yeah. Don't want to show anyone. It's my baby. It's my baby. I don't want you to tell me it's got a big nose.
It's my pregnancy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so what made you want to be a writer?
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's always in you. You know those kids that sit in their room with a notebook and write stories. I think I was a fan of, the Famous Five and the Secret Seven and all those sorts of things. And I remember writing these stories where people went down a cave and they went down different tunnels and found treasure and all this kind of thing. I never showed.
So what I'm going to say is you were a reader first then.
Oh, yeah.
Reading made you want to write because you enjoyed what you read.
Yeah, and you wanted to write the same kind of thing. But I never thought of it when I was a kid of getting published, or I don't think I ever finished those stories.
Yeah.
I think finishing them would have been a big thing, but never sort of thought of publicity or fame or anything. And it'd be nice to go back to that where you're just writing.
Yeah.
Because the more you know, is the grammar in this bit correct? Is that person like too much? Your brain can be too busy and wish you could. That's probably why writers are alcoholics, right? They've got to destroy that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because you,
Know everything, then we'll forget what you know and then just do it.
well, it's like you go into a trance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's trance-like.
Yeah. That's what you want.
Yeah.
When it's not, it's
So that's why when you, it can take you a long while when you're writing to get into that, what I call trance state.
yeah.
And then when you're there, you're happy being there. You got there.
It's
And then
fun.
somebody knocks on the damn door
Yeah.
or interrupts you or
Yeah.
whatever, and it takes you out.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
So what's your process?
I hate to say it, but I've realized that what my process is probably really wrong.
Mhm.
You would think that you would start at the beginning and finish at the end.
Right.
I have big pieces of paper stuck to my wall.
Mm.
And every time I get an idea, even if it's just, I reckon that person would use the word crap, or,
Oh, wow.
so it could be quite little. Or, I reckon they had like 4 and 20 meat pies, whatever.
Mm.
And then I write bits, and then I shuffle the bits around, and then
Do
so
you?
they're not in order. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
And then I try and construct a narrative out of that and then fill in the pieces. I wish I could write from
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wish I could do
I haven't
that.
been diagnosed with ADD, but if anybody has ADD, please put it in the comments.
Oh, no. So are you ever satisfied with what you write? Is there anything you've written that you've gone, wow, this is great?
At the time.
No.
But when you
Not
look
at the
back,
time. Not
when
at
you
the
look
time.
back, all you can see is the holes, right? All you can see is the holes.
Yeah.
But at the time, sometimes you go, oh, this is great. But recently, in the last week, I've been writing something, editing something that I wrote 10, 15 years ago. And
How good is that? I love editing. For me, getting the first draft down is super hard.
Yeah.
But reworking it,
Yeah.
amazing. I love that part.
Yeah. Mostly what I was doing is rereading it and seeing what I'd written and how it all hung together and that kind of thing. And most of it was a little bit disappointing, I have to say. Like I was like, oh, I thought there was more to it. I thought it was.
You thought it was? I thought it was better than this.
It was better than this. But sometimes you got to like a line or a paragraph, because I couldn't remember really what I'd written.
Yeah.
And you get to a paragraph and go, oh, that's really cool. Did I write that?
Yeah.
And there's bits of it that are court transcripts, like actual court transcripts. And then there's other bits of it that aren't real court transcripts. And I'm going to have to actually go back to my research and figure out which is which, because I couldn't tell. And I'm like, they must be all real. Or did I make them up? I don't know. I don't know anymore. But yeah, sometimes I'll get a line or something that I just really like.
Yeah.
More than, I think my biggest problem, as you can probably guess, is structure. And I think once I've structured something beautifully, I will be happy.
What do you mean by that? Like, because of the disjointed way you're writing and
perhaps, yeah,
putting on the board.
Yeah. I think if I had something that I felt like, had all the elements I wanted to have and was really cohesive.
What does cohesive mean?
Just that it hangs together really well, I guess.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes a great writer?
Well, I don't care about those things that I just said I care about for me. Don't bore me.
Right.
I think I can read something really old and laboured, like I'm reading Anna Karenina at the moment. But I kind of know the story. And obviously, as far as contemporary fiction, geez, you'd edit most of it out. But I'm really, really enjoying it. But yeah, don't bore me. I really like stuff where I learn something. So I really like things like Mao's Last Dancer, where you learn about communism on the side.
Right. Oh yeah, those are always terrific, aren't they?
Yeah.
'Cause I think if you're a prolific reader, a lot of your knowledge comes from things like that.
Yeah.
From reading even fiction where these like you're doing, where these true world events happen, and they tend to stick with you more.
Yeah.
These things you learn.
And they can give you different perspectives, because I think, if you talk about the Holocaust, we've all seen movies at least with, you know, so many aspects of that. And then you read the book Thief, and it's just sort of, it is in the Holocaust, but it's just sort of slightly to the side.
Mm-mm.
And not a different perspective, but a slightly different world. And yeah, it's good. And then you do learn things from books. So you've got all your bits that you know, and then it just puts in a little another piece of the jigsaw puzzle, I guess. Yeah. I loved that book at the time.
What, The Book Thief?
Yeah.
I never read it.
People I knew either read it and loved it or just couldn't get into it. I don't think it was a hard book to read, but it was possibly a little bit experimental. So,
Right.
like the narrator was God, basically.
Oh, really?
And he sort of talks about these colours. Oh, was the narrator God? No, I think the narrator was Death. Oh, what's the difference? I need to look back at the book Thief. But, you know, so it's not like traditionally written.
Okay.
So it wasn't inaccessible, but some people just didn't like it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably too concerned with how it was written when they were reading it instead of being able to get into the story. That's the problem sometimes with not writing conventionally.
I think it does put a lot of people off.
Because they want that immersion into whatever it is.
It's where you forget, I guess, that with something like that, you really know you're reading and you're going, wow, this is amazingly written or interestingly written. Whereas if you're reading something traditionally written, maybe you don't know you're reading.
Yeah.
And you're in the story. And maybe, yeah.
So who are some of your favourite authors?
Well, I was talking about Christos Tsiolkas before.
Yeah.
Really like him. But, you know, some of the things I really like is, you know, the kids' books like Enid Blyton. I love Enid Blyton. Magic Faraway Tree, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'll pretty much read anything. I've read Charlotte Wood's The Stoneyard Devotional recently, and I found it really interesting because I'd read at least one or two other of her books, and it was quite different. And I felt like it was so real that I couldn't believe it wasn't a memoir. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't a memoir. It wasn't a memoir.
Okay.
So, but it was just so real that you're like, how could you write this if it wasn't you and your life? So I found that something to maybe strive for. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to jump in there because you said memoirs. So there's a lot of people out there, and I've joined some writing groups, and quite a lot of people, I think the largest percentage of people who want to write want to write their memoirs. And I don't know if this is a cathartic exercise or if it's ego driven, because, you know, there are those people who think that their lives are really interesting, think that they really have something interesting to tell and want to tell it.
Yeah, and some of those can end up reading like an elaborate resume rather than...
That's right.
Yeah, like, okay, you were the first person to drive a steam train in the Blue Mountains, so therefore you write that, but
there's also this other aspect. I remember I was in a reading group one time, and someone was reading a passage from and it was like their memoir, the experiences.
Yeah.
And I could understand what they were trying to do, but they were missing the mark in regards that they, I don't know, lived in, let's call it San Francisco, but I can't remember where. They went to a cafe and all these interesting characters turned up to the cafe. So she'll be just writing about these interesting characters who turned up to the cafe. And one was this and looked like that and did that and got their coffee and left. Another one came in and looked like this and was like that and then left. Like there was no, and trying to tell her there was no story. And it may have been great for you at that time and a wonderful experience, but it's not coming across really well. That you want to highlight these characters. And it was quite, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, nobody cares.
Well, one thing that I've found about writing and memoir is that I never had any desire to do it. And when I was at uni, I was quite young, but I had a child,
Okay.
young mother. And as soon as my lecturer found out I had a child, they wanted me to write about motherhood, about domesticity. And he would always lend me these books written by women about in the kitchen. And I had no interest. I wanted to write about people going on adventures and having one night stands and all this sort of thing. And that's always what they wanted me to write about. And even now, I've got a friend and he's always like, "You've got to write about your life." And I'm like, I don't think it's A, that interesting, but B, what if I want to write about spaceships? It seems to be something that's really been pushed on me. I think it's quite a academic thing, that kind of thing could be expected.
And does it go with this thing of write what you know is probably why they're telling you to do that, but they don't know what you know. They don't know your experiences.
Yeah,
because they always say write what you know.
I can tell you a story about this. That I was teaching at Gosford High School, selective high school, but we were teaching them a first year creative writing class. And it wasn't Gosford High School students only. It was a few students from a few different schools that had been selected in some way to do a university course. And one of them said to me that she'd been told by her teacher to write what you know. And so she went home and wrote about two gay guys in World War II. And she won the Australian, I think the Age Young Writers Award or something.
Yeah.
And, but research. Don't put him in a trench if it's the wrong war.
Yeah.
Also, a 15-year-old girl in high school knows what war's like.
Yeah.
They know what not fitting in's like. Two gay guys in World War II. It's the same experience. It's the human experience.
Sorry,
right?
did you say two gay guys, World War II in a trench?
I might have the wrong war, you see.
All right.
Which war had the trenches?
Oh.
One.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so it's World War One.
Oh, and wars before that, actually.
Yeah. So get your right war, get your right trenches. But other than that kind of thing, like that human experience of having love that's unacceptable or not finding love or
being an outsider.
You're an outsider. So yeah. Write what you know, research the rest.
True.
If not,
make
up your own world.
Look, is writing a worthwhile pursuit?
I think if you're passionate about it, I haven't done it for a while and I've just started doing it again for, various reasons. And struggled with it. But on yesterday, I sort of, when I say writing, I was editing, which, is a nice soft way in. But I sort of got into that groove, what did you call it? The
trance.
The trance, where I couldn't stop and I'd go and get something to eat, had to come back. And I'm like, oh, I haven't felt that for ages. And it's, it's
nice.
It's what you like doing. It's the most fantastic thing. I wouldn't do it for money, expecting money. Or if I did, I'd do a very different kind of writing.
Yeah.
You need to write Mills and Boon or you need to write the things that are going to sell.
Going to pay the bills.
Go to pay the bills. So yeah, I'm not writing my Playboy at the moment. That was to, get some dollars.
Yeah, I get it. I think any writing, look, there are some snobbery about writing, which I encountered at university as well.
Oh, of course you did.
If I wrote some trash and I got paid, I'm happy. I'm getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to be the greatest writer in the world. They're not going to sing my praises.
But honestly, if you're a chef, how likely are you to be in a Michelin star restaurant?
I get what you're saying, but if I'm a chef and I'm working in a takeaway,
you're feeding a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm going to do takeaway food.
Sure.
I'm not going to do my Michelin star food.
Sure.
Depends what I get paid. Depends how easily I get the job. It depends who gives me the job.
You might move from one to the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be a bit of that.
Would be.
All right, ChatGPT. I'm going to finish on ChatGPT, or not GPT, or creative writing with AI.
Oh, yes. I almost started listening to a podcast about creative nonfiction, which is, what I like, and AI.
Yeah.
And I've opened it about 3 times and I can't bring myself to listen to it. And it's not that I'm scared, but I feel like it's going to ruin something for me. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think AI is up to doing any creative writing yet.
No, not yet.
It'll
get you to pass your assignments, I think.
Creative writing.
Yeah.
Assignments in creative writing.
I
I asked it why it's writing like that, why it doesn't write emotion, and it told me it doesn't have any feelings. So I thought, okay.
You need to have feelings to write feelings. Maybe you do.
It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't feel anything, so it can't write feelings. Because I like to write to make you feel a certain way.
I think that's the thing that's missing out of creative writing courses. And I don't know exactly how you'd put it in, but we'd teach you how to write dialogue, teach you sense of place, teach you about different kinds of plot lines, that kind of thing, theme, voice, emotion. Emotion's not in there.
How do you teach voice?
Let people write a lot of things and eventually your voice will come kind of thing. But that's a whole nother story. But emotion, I think, it's that thing that's missing. You can write by numbers. Quite, you can have the dialogue that works and the characters that are 3-dimensional, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But when I write, I want you to feel what this character's feeling.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Tell us.
I don't know how I do it. I'll have to think about that. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you.
The fact that it's in you, that you're thinking about it, so you're not there sitting there thinking, now, is this character well filled out?
No. as I'm writing, I'm thinking this character's feeling this, and I tend to feel it, so I take on my characters.
Yes.
And then...
You made yourself cry?
No, because I haven't written anything like that. Sad. So I take on the character.
Yeah.
And I write that.
Yeah.
But then I can inhabit like another character within the same page, say.
Yeah.
Which is evil.
Yeah.
And I inhabit that.
Yeah.
So I can switch between the two.
That's why writing's so much fun. You can be everyone.
Yeah. So whatever I'm feeling is what I try and put on paper. That's how I do it. But yeah, I think I've just answered the question.
I think it's something I need to think about a lot more. I've thought about it a lot, but I haven't thought deeply about it. I have thought I need to think about emotion, but I haven't thought about emotion.
That's me thinking about it just then.
Yeah.
So does that answer the question?
I think so.
Because I believe there's a lot of things in us. Like there's an ugliness in me.
There's ugliness in everybody.
Yeah, that can come out there.
Yeah.
Or there's joy and a happiness.
Yeah.
Or an innocence or naivety that
kind
comes
of sweetness
out, that comes out there.
Yeah.
How you want the world to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I do it.
Yeah. A sweetness came out in something that I was editing that I'd written a long time ago. That I don't think like that. I don't feel like that. And I'm like, oh, I wrote it though. So it must be in us, must be in there somewhere.
But it's not you, but it is you.
Yeah.
Like you're not that character, but you are.
Yeah, you're not any character, but you're all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if AI can ever do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yet. Let's just say yet.
Let's just say yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've come to the end of our podcast, the end of my questions. Did you want to ask me any questions or did you want to say anything?
I really enjoyed it. No, my brain's gone to mush, I must say, but I've really, really enjoyed talking about all this matter. And, we've come up with lots of ideas for talking at other times as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So much more to look at in the world.
Yeah.
In our little world.
A big little world on the Central Coast.
The big little world of the Central Coast. I like that.
And with that, thank you, Meg.
Thank you, Mada. Bye.
Bye.